Welcome everyone! Today I'm going to start digging into and breaking down this huge fat blog post I have that is like a master list about writing humor. And I've kind of compiled it over the years, and humor is a big draw for audiences. We may not like all the exact same kind of humor, but everybody likes humor. Everybody likes to laugh. But humor is also one of the hardest things to put into your writing and to pull off and do a good job with it. So this post is going to be broken up into several videos. But if you watch all of the videos, by the time we're done, you're going to have a good idea of different tactics, different elements, types of humor that you can bring into your story that you can work with, and you'll have a better understanding of how to master humor in your story. I'm pretty sure there's going to be stuff in here that you haven't thought about or considered, even if you are really good at writing humor. This will have some kind of a different angle, different perspective I'm coming to it, I guess, my perspective. I taught this at a Comic-Con, Salt Lake Comic-Con, which is like the second or third biggest Comic-Con in the world. I got some good feedback with it, so I'm glad to share it with you guys today. So basically, in the past I've been to a few workshops on writing humor, and I've read about writing humor, but the funny thing is I don't feel like any of them actually really told me how to write humor. They all just kind of said the same thing, right? That writing humor is so hard, and it's harder than writing seriously, because if you fail at humor, you fail horribly. Like, I heard it so much, it made me kind of fear failure rather than trying to develop this writing talent. So for a long time I kind of avoided writing humor at all. But the catch to that is because it is a huge draw, right? Like I talked about. I recently, well, at the time of this post, I'd recently read a book called Showing and Telling by Laurie Alberts, it's a pretty good book. And Laurie talks about how humor is hard to teach. It's so hard to teach that some writers believe it can't be taught. I disagree with that. I think it can be taught. Anyway, so people think that, and my argument is always the people who say it can't be taught are the ones who don't know how to teach it. And I mean, there's things I don't know how to teach, but I won't say that it can't be taught. Anyway, so some people, they can just write humor and they're just good at it and they do it naturally and they don't know why they're funny. It's just intuitive. It's just natural to them. I was at a workshop on writing humor, and the only how-to tip they gave me was that humor had to just come up naturally in the story. But professional comedians, they slave away and work their butts off writing their jokes and then practicing them. I mean, that's not natural. These are people who understand what they're doing. Like, sure, there's some improv comedians that are more natural, but there's a lot of shows and there's a lot of people who understand what they're doing, what kind of humor they're doing, and they master it over and over. If you look at shows like The Office, those writers, they obviously know how to write that specific kind of humor. And they use some of the same humor techniques over and over again. It's not just happening magically, right? It's planned out. It's even formulaic sometimes. If you look at the Marvel movies, right? They have a certain kind of humor. They have their own style. I once read an interview by Jeff Kinney, who wrote the Diary of the Wimpy Kid books, and in it he talked about how insanely difficult it was to come up with jokes sometimes. So yes, writing humor can be very hard, but it's not impossible. So after all this kind of non-advice I felt like I was getting about writing humor, I mean, some of it did mention a few things, but I didn't really feel like it was actually helping me, I decided to take it to my own hands. And I've studied humor on my own, and I've kind of done this how to write humor thing that has helped me, and so hopefully it helps you guys. Now, this isn't all-encompassing by any means, and, I hope to continue to add to it. And you might have a different sense of humor than I do, so the examples might not suit you as well. But hopefully you can take the ideas and find a way to apply them to you. Okay, so there's over 15 little humor tactics here. So today I want to talk about a few. So first off, I want to talk about overstatements and exaggerations. And there's a reason I'm going to talk about this first, okay? So an overstatement or exaggeration is playing up something, right? Making something seem bigger than it is. Now, many of the humor articles I have read said that exaggeration and overstatements are a no-no, and that and then they go on to give examples like, my room was so messy it looked like a bomb had gone off. And it's like, well, guess what? That's just a bad example. It's cliche and it's just blah, and I'll describe why it doesn't work in a second. The articles are right in saying, don't write that specific one because it's not very good. But the articles are wrong in saying that there is no good exaggerations. That's just not true. There are loads of good exaggerations and overstatements. Most parodies and spoofs are exaggerations, right? You can look them up. I'm sure you can find lots of them. And by the way, I do have some examples in this blog post if you want to actually go to the article that you can see. Maybe if you want to look at some of these examples, sorry. What I'm trying to say is I have videos that go some of these, so I have a spoof video for this one that you can look at if you want. Anyway, so the problem is, I guess, so if your exaggeration is generic, it'll fall flat, right? That's one of the reasons why my room was so messy it looked like a bomb had gone off doesn't work. But the second reason is it's been exaggerated too much. If you exaggerate too much, it'll just be ridiculous and sound stupid, right? So, wait, some of you might be saying, but that's, so many spoofs and so many other stories are hugely exaggerated. Well, that's because how much you can exaggerate depends directly on what kind of story you are telling. Some stories are like a spoof, right? Their whole purpose is based off the mechanics of exaggeration and overstatement. But most stories aren't like that. At the beginning of your novel, you are setting up readers' expectations about what kind of story this is going to be. If your exaggeration takes you too far out of the realm you've created, it'll fail. You just need to exaggerate far enough. Okay, so if your story is pretty true to life and regular, you don't want to compare a character's bedroom to a bomb going off. The voice of your narrator also sets up the boundaries for exaggeration. So how far you can take overstatements depends on voice, too. So I have an example here from J.K. Rowling. I want you guys to listen how, I'm assuming, well, everybody should be familiar with Harry Potter in some way. I want you guys to listen to how J.K. Rowling takes exaggeration just far enough outside of the realm of Harry Potter's world. Now, don't forget what kind of world this is, There are a lot of weird things going on, so she might have to take it a little bit further than somebody who's doing a story in the real world. Anyway, so the setup is that Harry is eating in the Great Hall next to Ron, right? Lavender arrives, and they basically start making out, okay? Then Hermione enters the scene. "Oh, hi, Pavarti," said Hermione, ignoring Ron and Lavender completely. "Are you going to Slughorn's party tonight?" "No invite," said Pavarti gloomily. "I'd love to go, though. It sounds like it's going to be really good. You're going, aren't you?" "Yes, I'm meeting Cormac at 8, and we're—" There was a noise like a plunger being withdrawn from a blocked sink, and Ron surfaced. Hermione acted as though she had not seen or heard anything. "We're going to the party together." So comparing two people pulling apart from a kiss to a plunger and a blocked sink is totally an overstatement, right? But that, coupled with the phrase "Ron surfaced," it made readers laugh. So there's an example of some exaggeration getting taken out just a little bit. In the Amazing Spider-Man movie, there's a part where a thief pulls out a knife, right? And Spider-Man falls down. He says, you found my weakness. It's small knives. And he starts acting like he's terrified. He even asks like a hilariously stupid question, right? He goes, "Is that a real knife?" It's even funnier because the thief answers seriously, "Yes, it's a real knife." And so that's an example of a character using exaggeration. So you can also have your characters exaggerate things for humor. So you don't have to blacklist exaggeration like everybody says. I think one of the reasons people have a problem with exaggeration is because it tends to be the go-to humor for beginning writers who are still learning how to do it and who might not be aware that there's other ways to be funny. Okay, and then this one goes with that I'm going to talk about real quick and we'll be done for the day. So the understatement, right, which is the opposite. And this is the one I usually see addressed. After people put down overstatement, articles usually go on and say, hey, don't use overstatement, it's bad, use understatement instead. And they refer to it with a good reason because it can be easy to do and have a powerful effect. So the understatement is the opposite, like I've kind of talked about. Instead of playing up a part of your story, you greatly downplay it, right? So there's a show I like and that I kind of grew up on, and in it there's this protagonist. He's this outlaw, and he's you don't find out till later, but he's not human, But he's like this amazing gunman, and he can do so many cool things. He has a superior skill, and he's very powerful. And contrary to his reputation, he actually like loves kids and plays games with them and all these things and acting like an idiot. Well, in one episode, he enters this quick draw tournament to earn money to help a family in need. And the town's kids, they witness him ace, each category in this quick draw tournament. And then we hear this dialogue, right, from these two kids. One kid goes, "Whoa, he's in the tournament." And the other kid goes, "Now he's cool enough to join our club." So if you were watching the show to that point, you laugh at that part because the phrase "now he's cool enough to join our club" is a huge understatement because there is basically no one more skilled than this outlaw. So the concept that he wasn't cool enough to qualify for a children's club is pretty hilarious. The humor tactic works, this is how it works. You show your audience something or someone really amazing and then you downplay it. Now, you can downplay it through dialogue, like that example. You can downplay it through narration. You can even downplay it through just like description. Now, just like the overstatement, this one can go wrong too. I've seen some understatements that just kind of make me want to facepalm because they're so cheesy or unrealistic or just bleh. There was one book I read in elementary school, and I still remember it for this one reason. I don't even remember like what the plot of the book was. But there was a character who downplayed every near-death situation by saying "piece of cake" afterwards. And even back then, I remember like groaning about it, and even though I didn't understand why. And the worst part was that line ended up being the last line of the novel. And so the reason it didn't work was partly because it's a cliche, so the joke fell flat. But the other part was that it was downplayed too much. Just like you can exaggerate things too much outside the realm of your novel, you can downplay things too much too. It can fail, in the same way. So you want to pay attention to cliches, your type of story, your narrative voice, everything like that. Usually in Harry Potter, if you watch Harry Potter movies, Ron has a lot of good one-liners that are downplaying things, right? In the Deathly Hallows, there's a part where one of their goblin companions gets killed by a dragon, and Ron just says, "That's unfortunate," right? And people laughed in the theater because it was an understatement. So, those are the two that we've covered today, right? Overstatement, you set up something ordinary and exaggerate it. Understatement, you set up something extraordinary and you downplay it. Next time I'll continue on with a few others. Probably fit more in. Depends on their length and how long they take to explain. But those are two that you can work on and think about. So subscribe to my YouTube channel and get my latest writing tips at septembercfox.com. Thank you. Bye.